Alright, today I'm going to try to work on getting the shock hoops tacked in place, if not fully welded onto the frame. I've got the axle on this little makeshift furniture dolly to help me move it around. Of course, having it built now, it's quite a bit heavier and I can't just pick it up and move it by myself as easy. This gets it just underneath the spring pins on the leaf springs, so I'm going to roll this thing under there, get the U-bolts on, and get this truck set down on the jack stands once again. Let's see if I can make some sense out of this. It might be a little tough to see in the frame, but the lower shock mount down here, I was using my angle finder. Before I set the truck down, it was still up in the air on the jacks. It was, raised. I would zero it out here using my a little stick here as my shock replacement, basically, and I would do my best to get it within, a degree up here, and kind of looked where it was pointing, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's a bolt up here on the fender, and it almost dead lines up with that, just as a visual reference for me. So then I set it on the weight of the springs. No jack stand supporting the front end. She's loose and has suspension. I did the same thing. Zeroed it out at the shock mount again, and then checked the fake shock. And sort of the same thing. It's still pointing very, very close to the center of this, maybe a hair forward, front side of that nut. That's trying to simulate some of the travel, and it seems to be in line pretty well. So I think that's where I'm going to shoot for, getting that mount in this area. I'll try shooting to get that upper shock mount, using this stick as my fake shock. You see, it's sort of the center sort of points towards that bolt up there, so I'll probably try to get the shock mount somewhere in this location. The other thing I have to make note of is I still intend to take 1-inch body lift out, so this body's going to come down 1 inch. So I need to get the shock clamped in here and kind of start eyeballing where it's going to land. A minute ago I had the suspension at ride height, not compressed, but at ride height. Based on my measurements from the eye of where that is, that thing's barely going to fit if I bring the body down. Based on the measurements at ride height, that eye to eye is like 24 3/8 of an inch from mount to mount, which shortens this, which would compress this shaft 10 5/8 of an inch, which leaves you, that's a throw, or excuse me, 14 inches of throw. So this subtracted from 14 gives you 3 3/8 of an inch. That's how much of the shaft would be exposed at ride height, which means on up travel, that's my limiter. So I have some concerns that that's going to be a little bit, limiting. I'd hate to be running into that going over speed bumps in town and stuff like that. I could always swap to a 12-inch travel shock, and let me get my tape measure again. Alright, if I were to go to a 12-inch travel shock, I looked online and the eye to eye is like 30 inches. Just throwing the tape measure up here right now, and this is now with the truck picked up. This side's, I'm not going to call it full droop, because that shackle should swing a heck of a lot farther forward, but it's approaching full droop. And with that at the bottom, you can see I'm at about 28 and like a half, 3/8, somewhere around there. So if you add another 1.5 inches of that, you're going to get a little more drop out here because you're farther from the pivot point, which is the springs. But with the 12-inch travel shock, you'll be getting close to running out of full length. But at compression, I won't bottom out, which could allow me to bring this shock hoop down a little bit farther, which both would help my droop and because the body of the shock is like 2 inches shorter, I'll be less likely to crush it. So I'll probably be bringing this shock hoop down just a little bit and end up running some 12-inch springs, or 12-inch shocks, excuse me. The 14s I can always use in the rear. I expect the rear is what's actually going to flex more. It usually is. Seems like most leaf spring trucks I see on the trails, it's the rear is really doing the work. So especially with leaf springs and non-hydraulic full hydro steering, steering kind of starts to become a limiter as well. Anyhow, I think I'm going to get that lowered. And you can see what I was doing now that this is under extension. Step outside the shop. You see the truck is leaning. It's starting to fall on this side. Doing the same thing, taking my angle finder, magnetize it to the side, zero it out. I can put it on here and kind of fake the angle. So you're kind of getting in the ballpark there, and it's lining up pretty close. Seems like at full droop it might want to be a little bit forward of where it's sitting now. And as I said, if you're kind of looking straight down it, I've got it lined up sort of the face side of that nut. Just gives me a visual. So, I don't know. It's just a lot of figuring. It'd be nice if I could take this thing out and really flex on something. But, it's going to have to do for now. Alright, I'll see if I can explain what I've done. I've been using this 1 1/4 wide stick as the shock substitute. I painted the back side of the shock hoop because once it's in here it's a lot harder to get behind it to paint it, so at least there's a coat of paint on it. I also welded the top of this motor mount here in preparation to get this thing on there because it's a lot harder to get behind it after I have it tacked in place. So the next thing I did was zero out my angle finder down here on the shock. So that tells me the alignment in that orientation. And then if I use this as my shock substitute, I can put it in there. And I'm holding it kind of firm against that side so it's in line. If I put my angle finder on it, I'm nice and zeroed out. I've also lowered it right here at the very top from the body because I know I want to bring the body down. And based on my measurements, a 14-inch shock, 14-inch travel shock is not going to fit. I'm going to have nearly no upward travel, and I'm not even going to be able to utilize like 3 inches of the downward travel, so it makes no sense to use it. I'll try to use that in the rear probably, so I'll need to order some 12-inch travel shocks. By bringing this down, it actually will give me, I'll still have, because of the shortness of the body of the shock, even bringing this down, I'll still have more room for up travel, so I have more like 5 inches of up travel, and then I'll have like 7, 4.5, and 7.5, or like 5 and 7, 4, something like that. I bad with the math on the fly. Point is, I get a little bit more up travel by using a shorter bodied shock and bringing this down. I have plenty of clearance to bring the body down 1 inch. I've got about 1 1/4 up here, maybe 1.5 inches. At right eye here, my eye to eye is 24 3/4, I believe. 23 3/4. Before I had like 24 5/8, so I definitely brought it down about 1 inch. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it. It gives me, I can still utilize all the down travel of a 12-inch shock, and I've got a little bit more up travel. In the cap can come down that inch and not have a problem. So I think I got it where I want it. I'm going to go ahead and tack it in place. Alright, an update on the shock mounting. I've got this thing tacked in on the driver and passenger side. It's just tacked. Now I'm working on some gussets. Originally from the manufacturer of this thing, it comes with some additional tubes that you would gusset to the frame to the back, however you want to do them, but I don't really like them. They're hard to weld on. So I've been making some 1/4 inch, 2 inch flat stock, and I'm getting them set up so that I can set them against the frame and gusset this thing from the back. Originally I was intending to go to the front side, but I chose not to do that because I'm going to probably run into some clearance issues with the front of the input shaft on the steering box, and I didn't want to notch it that bad. So I'm thinking I'm going to do this one right here. I still got to build the one for this side, the rear. I had intended to run this brake line across here, like kind of come here and come down to a bracket welded to the frame there, but if I run a brace against the side here, I will have to swap the brakes to the back side and just run a loop out of the back here and then come straight down into a bracket welded on the frame, which I don't think that's going to be a big deal, so I'm just going to go ahead and shoot for mounting them inwards instead of outwards. Alright, I finished up the welding. Didn't video it. All my videos end up being welded this, welded that. So, looks okay. Welded around the bottom posts. Looks alright. She ain't going nowhere. Harder to see on this side, but holds up good. So that's going to be it on the shock mount. Like I said, I will end up ordering a 12-inch shock to go top to bottom on this. I think it's going to work better for the measurements I've been getting as far as up travel and down travel. Under compression, I definitely don't want to be bottoming out on the shock. It will blow it apart. But inversely, I don't want to be slide hammering the 12-inch apart, so I'll have to be cautious, double check things, but I do think I need a 12-inch shock. Either way, that's going to conclude the shock mounts.